Here today. Today, we're going to be talking about interviewing and what's going on in the salary space. So, how do we maximize your salary for your clients so that they can get the offers that they really want? And we're going to be talking about how it's really more than salary. We're going to be talking about compensation negotiation because salary is just a little part of the pie. And there's so many other things that our clients might be concerned about and might have flexibility in terms of negotiating for themselves. So, we're going to first talk about some salary trends, what's been going on in the world in terms of companies and economics and how we can manage some of that. And then we'll talk about so what? What does that mean for our clients and how do they negotiate in any economy? We want them to feel empowered to negotiate no matter what the economy looks like. But we got to get a little bit of a reality check first. So let's talk about what's going on in the wonderful world of salary. 2022 and the beginning of 2022 especially was this huge boom. You had people talking about salary increases from 10% and plus. You might remember that Eric Lee from Robert Half was here at the beginning of the year and he shared that Robert Half's salary projections, and it was pretty aggressive, right? There's a lot of companies raising salary and making a big splash about it. And one of the articles, and this one is more from the beginning of the year, where Sherm was talking about the growth in the private industry. And so they're talking about wages going up 5% on average in the US, higher than, obviously higher than before, but higher than we'd seen in a few years. What does that mean for your clients, and were they seeing some of this? I'd love to see that, at the beginning of the year, were your clients seeing these kind of salary offers going up, raises within their company? Is this the reality? Great article here from Sherm on the wages and salaries for private industry workers. And again, this was January. So we saw these very aggressive, you know, forecasts, what was going to be going on, as well as the things that were happening. And of course, even with these pay raises, it wasn't matching inflation. So that was part of this story too, that there was a lot of salary increases going on, but that it still wasn't pacing with inflation. Then we start to see a little bit of a cool off. So this was an article in August, so not too long ago here, where you had people talking about the the impending recession, especially here in the US. I know that some countries are feeling this even more. Countries in Europe, I'm hearing from our colleagues that they're seeing the recession as more of a eventuality and feeling this pressure even more than we are here in the US, and really talking about how white collar graduates are vulnerable in this recession. And it talks about the rescinded offers that were happening, companies that are laying off, salary freezes. And so as the year goes on, what we start to see is this uncertainty around salary, this uncertainty around, what do I know and how can I negotiate? And we're going to talk about that here in a second. When we get this kind of uncertainty, of course, then people start to wonder, well, can I negotiate, right? And what does that look like? And how do I make that happen? And one of the questions, great question that was asked in our clubhouse room yesterday, such as yesterday, was about, what do I do if I see a job and the salary is not that great, right? The salary is not as high as I'd want it to be. And I love that we're seeing this question because it means people are publishing the salary. And we now have New York, California, Washington State, and Colorado, and maybe others. Let me know if you know of others, states that have implemented a law that requires salary transparency. So you're required to post the salary along with those jobs in that state. What this does for our clients is it gives them another research tool. We'll talk about salary research here in just a second, but this trend is happening, and we're starting to see more places posting the salaries. Just saw an article saying Indeed wants the salaries posted with all of their jobs, and they're really pushing towards that. So as you're seeing that movement happen, it may make salary negotiation feel a little bit different for people. Now you have this posted salary range. What do you do if you're interested in the job, but you don't necessarily think the salary is that attractive. So we're going to talk about three things that people need to do to negotiate salary in this very uncertain environment, right? We've got big salaries some places, you've got challenges in other places. How do you figure out where you fit and where your client fits when they're negotiating salary? First thing is that your research absolutely needs to go beyond a website today. Start there. We'll give you all those websites, right? Salary.com, the US Department of Labor, Glassdoor, LinkedIn. You can start there and get some baseline, but it's way too volatile right now to count on a website for your salary data. It's always at least a year old, if not 18 months old. And your client's going to be stepping into something without the best information if all they're relying on is a website. So if you're joining me today, say hello. I see some of you out there. Say hello. Tell me where you're joining me from. I'd love to see who's out there. And if there's any other salary websites that you have your clients start with, drop those in there as well. So what does this mean? People who say, Marie, I can't ask someone else about their salary. And I'm, bred in the Midwest. I totally get it. We're not supposed to talk about money. You do not have to ask people what they make. Here's the benefit of doing the online research is that then you could go someone and you can say, what I've researched for this position is this range. I see that people in this position typically start here. Is that what you're seeing in your company right now? Is that what you're seeing in the industry right now? So you throw out a number when you're negotiating. You don't want to do that. But when you're talking and doing research, it's very helpful because it breaks the ice. So here's what I researched. Is this what you're seeing? Now you're not asking the person what they make. You're not asking them to divulge any personal information about salary. You're simply asking, is this typical? This is what I've researched. This is what I'm seeing. Is this reality check, right? I want to reality check this data that I'm seeing on Glassdoor or salary.com or wherever it might be, because I know that things are so volatile right now. And some industries are holding salary or increasing those large numbers, and some industries are frozen or maybe have even had a little bit of erosion there because of the fears around recession. At least that's in the US. Hi from Vancouver. Thanks for joining us, Sophie. It's nice to see you. And then I also see you have someone joining us from Detroit. Thanks, Laura. Nice to see you. So, love to see if there's any other salary websites that you recommend. And again, my first tip here is that people absolutely need to go beyond the websites today. There's too much going on for you to think you're going to get good data off of any of those sites that are lagging at least 6 months behind, if not more. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I did a LinkedIn post on this on Monday. Was that Monday? Yeah, Tuesday, maybe Sunday. Anyways, LinkedIn post on how to build the value in the interview. So many people are talking about salary negotiation. It's a sexy topic. I get it, but it is moot. It doesn't mean anything if you are not making yourself known as the best candidate in the interview process. So a few tips that I had for that is, of course, as you're talking to people in the interview, you're getting ideas for what really matters to them. What are their pain points? What are they struggling with? What are the things they're really wanting this new position to do? And hopefully your clients are asking some of those questions in the interview. And then when they ask those questions, of course, they want to be able to transition their interview answers to speak to those skills, to speak to the problems that they've solved, and to speak to, being that person that can come in and get the job done quickly, easily, and those types of things. Now, while your client is doing that, it may feel a little bit like, oh, I'm, selling myself, but it's really about making sure that you're a good fit. So you're asking those questions, and then you're sharing your ways that you add value and that you meet those needs. But of course, in that middle point, you're deciding, are these the problems I want to fix? Is this a good fit for me? And if you are discerning as the candidate, where you're really thinking, is this a good fit for me? You're asking those questions to really understand what they want someone to do in this job. It serves both purposes. You are figuring it out if it's a good fit for you, and you're getting that language and the focus that you need to really be able to hit the nail in the head and communicate your value. It's really not that different than a sales call. We've been talking a lot about sales calls in our business group recently. It's really not that different, right? You ask good questions, you listen, and you reflect back and connect it to you personally of how you can deliver that value. And of course, if it isn't a good fit, it isn't a good fit and you can't force it. But when you're asking those questions, you can better draw those connections and you're really building your value so that when they get to the point where they want to make that offer, they're already really keyed in on that you are the right person for this job, which of course, big point, you aren't negotiating until the offer is made. So all of this lead up, all of this exploratory conversation and connection is so important. And you're waiting until they make that offer before you negotiate. Now, remember we had the person that asked the question about what do I do if the posted salary isn't what I'd like it to be? You've got to decide, is it close enough? You can maybe have 10%, maybe 20% flexibility at the most. If the salary is much lower than that, it may just not be a good fit. And you've got to decide what is your bottom line? And if the salary is really that much lower than your bottom line, it may not be worth your time. Maybe an exploratory conversation to see if there's other roles available within the organization or to see what their flexibility is. But I'd hesitate to dive into an interview process with that company, knowing that it's not a good fit for your requirements. And how do you want to play that? How is that going to work out for you? So look at that number. When we're talking houses or cars, we usually talk 10 to 20% the most. And is there that wiggle room? Yes. Is it going to go much beyond that? Probably not. And you could waste a lot of your time and a company's time and perhaps not make a good impression when you're so obviously not a good fit for the role. Here's the caveat, and this is my third key. So we've talked about making sure you are doing your research outside of just the web today. Got to talk to somebody. We talked about building that value in the interview process so that you're waiting and you're building that value until they make an offer. And then the third thing is you got to get out of the salary mindset. Compensation is so much more than salary. And that's especially true today when people are offering signing bonuses, they're offering, mental health, professional development, more paid time off, whatever it might be that you can have flexibility around. Maybe there's not flexibility in the salary. Some companies have gone to, and this is another trend to watch out for, where they've gone to where they won't negotiate salary because they want to create more equity in their company. I don't know if it will work out for them or not, but I am hearing companies do that, right? This is the range or this is the offer, and we're not negotiating because we want to create more equity. And since this is equal pay month, I believe, right, we know that negotiation creates even more inequity between men and women because women tend not to negotiate as much. Companies know that. And so they've started to create policies around negotiation so that they don't create more inequity. It's not a huge trend right now, but it is happening, and you may have clients that have someone say, "Oh, we don't negotiate salary," and I wouldn't be too put off by that because there's a good intention behind it. They're trying to do something good there with that policy. We'll see if it works out or not, but they're trying. So they may not be able to negotiate salary, but what else are your levers that you might be able to pull to make it a good fit for you? Always try on salary, and you want to ask questions around the range of the role. You want to wait until you get that offer, and you want to see if you can find out what they're anticipating for the role before you start your negotiation. Of course, do your research, talk to someone, and then you want to figure out what other opportunities are there to increase your overall compensation. Compensation is going to be an important word. We'll come back to that in a second because it's so much more. Like I said, professional development, paid time off, healthcare benefits, retirement benefits. Help me add some more to the comments, right? There are so many things that we can negotiate, and we get overly focused on salary. Salary is important. You definitely want to explore that conversation. However, even if you make some inroads in salary, you don't want to leave it there because you want to make sure, one, that you understand the other elements, even if you're not negotiating them. And two, you want to make sure that you look for opportunity there to get your needs met, which means that your candidates want to sit down before the interview and really think about what's important to them: salary, paid time off, medical benefits, whatever it might be. How are you going to negotiate some of that? And most importantly, how are you going to figure out what the offer is in all of those areas? And then decide if there's areas that you want to negotiate. So yeah, 84%. And this was from, I don't know if that's the most recent job fight, but definitely employers expect you to negotiate. Again, with the caveat there that some aren't negotiating to try to have that equity internally in their company. Ed reimbursement, professional development opportunities. Yes, what's available to you? What might you be able to negotiate? Thanks for adding those, maybe Laura there. So we've gotten through the interview, we're negotiating our compensation. I always take a collaborative approach, and I'd recommend that you talk to your clients about that. So if something isn't right, if they want to get a higher salary, you restate their offer, $80,000. My research showed that this position is more in the range of 90 to 100,000. How could we work together to get closer to that number? It's collaborative approach. It's not a take it or leave it unless it really is, and then that may happen. You want to be careful with that. And how can we work together? You've researched a range. You're doing that conversation in a way that matters. The most successful people also have some reasoning behind it. So I've researched the range, and the top of the range is this. Your role was looking for these things. I meet or exceed all of those things. My expectation is to be close to the high end of this range. And you probably heard my story about the salary negotiation or compensation negotiation that happened within my own little world here, when someone I knew tried to negotiate paid time off and they didn't get it. The company said, "Oh, we don't do that." And then someone else interviewed with that same company 6 to 8 months later, and that person said, "You usually give an extra week of vacation when someone's worked for 5 years with you. I've worked for more than 5 years in this field, even though it hasn't been with the company." And that person got the extra week of vacation, which is why it's so important to understand the company policies and how they tick and ask those questions so that you can have a reasoning for what you're negotiating, not just, "Hey, I think I deserve that." What's the reasoning? How do you match up? How can you work within their policies to get that advancement in whatever it might be you're looking at when we talk about compensation? So I'm super excited, and we've been working on this for years, and it just hasn't been the right time to release it. But we have signed up a few early people for our interview coach certifications, kind of the last little piece in our puzzle here at Career Thought Leaders. It's an interview and compensation negotiation coaching class. We call it compensation because, again, it's so much more than salary that we're talking about here. We want to help people negotiate promotions and all of those things. Now, that is a part of the class, a big part of the class, but we're also talking about interview coaching because, again, people can't negotiate salary if they're not positioning themselves as the best candidate during the interview, and if they're not learning that critical information that they need to know to best negotiate while they're going through the interview process. So I'm excited about that. We're going to roll that out. Starts on September 30th. We have 15 spots, and half of them have been taken by our previous certification students. And so we're excited about that and love for you to join us if you're interested. Some companies produce individual total compensation statements. Yeah, that outline everything that you might get. And there's so many opportunities for people to see their total compensation and to understand that it's so much more than salary and how important that is. Um, yeah, and the categories and what that looks like. Thank you for sharing that, Norma. That's very powerful. So as we finish up here, just thinking about how, uncertain salary might be, people really need to do research by talking to people in the industry. Again, you don't have to ask them what they make, share your range, reality check that. You've got to build your value in the interview. So you're asking the questions that really help you key in on what's most important to them. You're negotiating after you get an offer, and you're thinking compensation, not salary, so that you give yourself an opportunity to have a broader conversation about things, which usually makes it more comfortable for people because there's more conversation to be had, and it gives you a better starting point when you're kicking off at that new company. We will see you next week. Again, if you're interested in that interview class, let me know. It starts September 30th, which is next Friday. And we also have a job search session we're doing tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, drop me a note and I'll send you the link for that as well. We will see you next week. Thank you,